for SFMS May 2022. I can't believe we're here. Looking forward to summer and the nicer weather. So I wanted to spend a few minutes because I know we sent probably 3 to 4 emails about this, but it's important. And the reason I think it's important is because we made a change to a process, the expedited warrants process. So this is a process you can use when you want to cut a warrant the same day. So there's already urgency in the fact that it's an expedited warrant, and then we change the process for you. So I know in certain situations, you want it out. And so to change anything about it becomes even hyper urgency, I guess, in my mind. So I'm just going to walk through what we did. If you guys all saw all my emails, and actually that would be good to see, did you guys get this notice in the 3 emails we sent out in March? Because this became effective April 1st. So if you could let me know that, yes, you are aware of this new process, that will make me feel more comfortable that when you actually need the process, you know that it has changed. So, so new pickup process for expedited warrants. The batch cycle now runs at 12 rather than 12:30, but that shouldn't change for you guys because we had already set your time at noon. We're just running it soon after. You do not have the, we would give you guys some time because life happens and you were trying to get it to us, you know, past the time. But now it runs at 12 p.m. That's when it, you know, runs. The return to agency warrants will be delivered to the agency in the afternoon shuttle run. That's the difference. Before, you guys would come to our office to pick up the warrant because it would just get sent to us. But now, because we have it running at a earlier time, it allows the shuttle people to get that warrant and take it to you directly. So it's twofold, right? We don't have to be in the office to try to get the warrant to you. It comes directly to you. But with that, we have to, you guys have to understand that wherever the mail is going to go, that's where that warrant is going to go. So who's in the office, who's going to be there to get the warrant. So you have to think through all of that in the morning that you're trying to get this expedited warrant out. So just put that, you know, in the back of your heads that you need to figure out, okay, where does the shuttle run come? Who gets it? Because that's where the warrant's going to be. So that's one thing. It can go RA goes to on the shuttle run and then process to pick up the warrant. So the other thing is you don't want it to come back to your office. You actually want to go physically pick it up at the publishing and distribution building, which is P&D on Airport Road. But in order to do that, you need to email Ben and Steve and Vernon to let them know you're coming to pick up that warrant, to hold that warrant for you. And also you have to be on the authorized signers list because we can't just give a warrant to anybody. And then you have to come between 2:45 and 3:30. So that's after their runs in the morning and stuff. And there's the address, 550 Airport Road. You ring the buzzer at the glass shuttle sliding doors and you show your state ID. And only the people on the authorized list will be given this warrant. So again, you know, it could get very, very stressful. If you send someone that's not on the authorized list, they get there, they're not on the list, and then we have to call like the accounting manager. So it's a big deal. So again, you know, you're trying to do this in a rush. We have to have the authorized signer. Lots going on. Please make sure, I'm going to look at the chat so everybody's aware that this is a new process. So very good. So here we go. I just wanted to talk about that for 2 seconds because it is that important. Okay. I'm just going to keep moving now. So the agenda, we're going to have the payroll replacement project. Seth Lewis is here and Jennifer Taylor are going to give us an update on that. I'm sure everybody's very excited to hear about that. The year-end roll program, we start year-end roll at the end of June, and we want to talk you through what happens in the system, all these different indicators. So the program, the year-end closing guidelines, requesting year-end reports, which is really important. And then we always have a financial screen highlight because our system has a lot of screens that a lot of people don't know about. So we highlight a screen every user group and we kind of talk you through why we think it's important. And then we have an Oregon Buys update because I'm sure who in the user group is in wave 1? Can you guys put it in the chat for me? Wave 1 agencies going live June 1st. Do we have any participants in that here this morning? If that makes sense, let me know. If not, okay, very good. Thank you, Carol. Yes, yes, very good. Anybody else? That'll be interesting. Already, okay, great. And then the OB1 update, and Erin is here to talk to us about that because I know I'm sure that's on a lot of your guys' minds. So with that, I am going to introduce, yes, thank you, Kevin. Introduce Seth Lewis and Jennifer Taylor for the payroll replacement project update. So Jennifer, I will let you take over from now.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we are going to start with Seth.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Seth Lewis. I'm the business team manager for the payroll replacement project, and thought this would be another good group to provide a project update to. So if you haven't heard, we have a new go live date for Workday payroll and time tracking is December 1st of 2022. And with this delay, it's going to allow agencies to work on multi-factor authentication within their agency to enhance it. And of course, if you have questions about multi-factor authentication or MFA, please reach out to your agency CIO, and then your agency CIO can reach out to Tony Black, who works at DAS EIS. And then just a reminder that Workday is secure, but multi-factor authentication just helps secure the pathway as you log into a system. And it's not just Workday, it's any state applications that will benefit from multi-factor authentication. So December 1 or December, as most of us know who worked in state government for any time, is always paid in January. So that's technically the start of our tax year. So starting in December for Workday payroll and time tracking, we'll get us all started with that tax year of 2023. And so for November payroll, that'll be paid on December 1st. That will still come out of the legacy payroll system, or as we call it, the Oregon statewide payroll application. Next slide, please. And this is the revised project schedule. So there's a lot of information on here. So I'll kind of highlight just a few areas for you. We do have a monthly newsletter that we sent out here recently, and I can put that in chat, a link to subscribe to that newsletter. It went out last Thursday. And so that just gives you an update on the latest happenings with the project. We ideally plan to send that on a monthly basis. It could be more frequent depending on the information we have to share with everyone. We do have a readiness survey coming out in June, and then we have a couple more to follow up just to kind of make sure agencies are aware of the project and the expectations that come along with it. We are in the middle of parallel testing as well, and we will be wrapping that up and moving over to the next phase of our testing, which is gives us an opportunity to work on some additional defects, to work on some CBA collective bargaining agreements updates as well, to get that ready for the next tenant. For you particular folks, when it comes to training, for payroll partners, there'll be training in September. There'll be what we call a train the trainer approach happening in October for agency resources and manager training as well. So the expectation is on the project team will train agency resources, and then those resources will then deliver content within their agency. There will be actually required online training as well within Workday Learning sometime around the November timeframe. So I think that's most of, one more thing for this group as well is the Data Mart. We are working on some reports that'll actually continue to feed the current Data Mart server for payroll information for those who use the Data Mart to pull for costing information. If you pull it from the SFMS tables, those will continue to be populated. But if you pull from payroll type of tables, we will have new tables that will be created. We'll be working with Aaron and Joe within DAS to be able to create those new tables. So I think that's it. So next slide. For training, so knowledge articles are currently being developed. What knowledge articles are quick reference guides that are actually being set up and created within Workday itself. So they'll actually be part of a search functionality, a help tool. So if you search for, hey, how do I enter my time? It'll actually give you a couple different options. One being, hey, if I have to enter overtime, what do I need to do? It'll go through step by step to be able to walk you through how to do that stuff. There'll be also online and virtual instructor-led courses as well. So again, in Workday Learning, there'll be some modules so you can sign up for to be able to walk through as employees and managers. And then again, I talked about the requirements tied to training as well. So we do have some courses for employee and managers and payroll partners, in fact, that'll be required for everyone to be able to take to ensure they've been given a training opportunity to understand more about Workday payroll and time tracking. So I think next slide. Okay, yeah. So last thing I wanted to present is just talk about some key points and reminders. Salaried employees, whether you're eligible for overtime or not, will not be moved to hourly. I know there had been some discussion in the past regarding a possible move. That is not taking place. So if you're paid salary now, you'll continue to be paid salary moving forward into Workday. Pay periods are not changing. We'll still be a monthly employer. For those that are salaried, you paid your salary on the first of the month. There will be a mid-month paycheck as well. So if you get paid for additional time for overtime, shift differentials, what have you, that'll still be something that'll come out on the mid-month, or if you enter it before and you worked it before the close of run one, you'll get paid that on your first of the month paycheck as well. And I think the last thing I wanted to point out is, again, managers will continue to be responsible for approving the employee's time, and that it's important to know that there will be backups in place. There's a way to delegate that time approval functionality like there currently is. There's a way to actually delegate time off requests within Workday as a manager. So if you're a manager, please make sure, if you're not sure about how to delegate something, work on that process, because it's only you as a manager, like when you log into Workday, can actually delegate that. No one else can actually do that on your behalf. But also know that the DAS Central Support Team for Payroll will also have a process they'll go through to audit and review approvals and be able to move things forward in the event that we need to make sure employees are paid what they're due. So I think those are the biggest talking points I want to make sure to pass along. If you do have questions, put in chat. I'll be hanging out here for a little bit more to be able to answer them. But yeah, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Jennifer.
So I don't see any questions in chat for Seth, but I'll give it just a minute more. Okay. So what's changing in terms of SFMA? Specifically, the interface will be coming from Workday. The source is changing, format's the same, and there will be changes to some effective dates. Let's see. One specifically that we're looking at and planning on doing is less affects the agency specifically, but it's on the T code 851, and making sure that's in line with when the payment's done versus the effective date of the actual payroll. So right now they're backdating to the month, the same effective date as the T code 850. We're looking at moving that to when the check is actually issued. So let's see. New payroll, the new PYRL field on the profile screens. This is specifically for the screen 24, 26, 27, and 29. It's the index, PCA, projects, and grants. That will help us create an extract for the projects and grants that is being worked on. And then also, right now, we've got the DAF-J 482, which inactivates employee vendors on should be inactive employees. So once a employee leaves the state employment, then it's a process that automatically goes through and inactivates any vendors and changes them to inactive vendors. And it's making sure that new source data is coming from Workday versus OSPA, like it currently is. So things SFMS is currently working on, again, the new payroll field. While that field is active, we've done the mass updates that the agencies have requested. There's additional tasks related to adding that new field, specifically around the profile archive and the profile role. We just got done with testing the profile archive, which is going to be scheduled for, which is actually scheduled for May production. So the timing on that's, we had to get that done. So, and the next thing is the profile role, but that doesn't happen till 2023, so it's falling down the priority list. But it is on our list to make sure happens. The DAF-J 482 inactivate terminated employees, again, the new source data. That's actually moving to production very soon. Our first output file will be coming from Workday. Right now, we're planning for June 1st. Then it will be validating the job processes as expected on the 13th. We're not planning on changing the schedule of that job. The schedule of when the data is coming in will be different because of the different source. But as far as when it's currently scheduled, the calendar is correct. So it will create the same delay in inactivating employees that currently happens. We're looking at reviewing test files from Workday for T codes 599, 850, and 851. As well as ensuring the automation of integrations is set up and working as expected for both the incoming interfaces from Workday and the outgoing extract from Workday. And then also we're in ongoing discussions with the Workday team around reports. Interface testing. So right now we're planning on testing run 1 and run 2. Ideally 3 tests for each run, and all agencies will be tested. And so we're going to be reaching out to agencies to help us test. Hopefully there's minimal errors that come through, but we will need your help in clearing some of those errors, because we want to see the validation of transactions against reports from Workday. We're doing a comparison of the T850 to the 851. But then we also want to look at ensuring that subsequent transactions are still happening as well. So just another brief discussion of the payroll field on the profile screens. Here's the screens that are affected, the 27 and 29. Those are, that's a currently planned integration. The 24 and the 26 are an index code and PCA profile, and those are for possible future integration. It indicates if the profile should be available in Workday for payroll use. Allowable fields are yes or no, or a Y or an N, and it will default to N. And it will be pre-populated. So if you're not already doing this now, please set this up as you're setting up new profiles. Consider, are we going to use it for payroll or not? And then it's about maintaining the existing profile fields. The integration will include the agency, the project or grant, the phase, the agency code 2 for project, and the agency code 1 for grant. Description, effective date, status, and effective end date. It's going to be automated nightly, and we actually added something recently to append the file if it's not picked up. This just ensures minimal issues as far as dates and when it's available in Workday. But the data will be viewable by all agencies. So, and here's the website for info and updates, the time tracking replacement. The link is embedded in the slides. And if you have any questions, please email the project team or myself. And are there any questions?
We do not currently have any questions in the chat log. If you have any questions, please type them in and we can still get them in. Otherwise, I think, Jennifer, if you'll go ahead and advance the next slide, we can move on to the next topic.
Okay, so next we have Alan Park with the fiscal year end rollover.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alan, and I'm here to talk about the year-end roll programs. The year-end roll programs run each year on the last working day of June. This year, they're scheduled for Thursday, June 30th. The account balances in the fiscal year tables will roll forward to the new fiscal year. I'm sorry, maybe I forgot to advance. We should be on slide 18, apologies. So the account balances in the fiscal year tables roll forward to the new fiscal year. The rolling the balances forward occurs. Okay, it appears someone else is moving the slides.
Alan, if you can go ahead and take control, then you can move the slides on your own.
I thought I had. I must have not clicked on the right box. I'm sorry. Okay, so we should be on slide 18 right now. So rolling the balances forward occurs in a two-step process. Program DAFM 353 extracts and rolls the data from each financial table to the next fiscal year. And then program DAFM 356 merges together any rows with duplicate keys. New financial balances appear not only in the first month, but in all months of the new fiscal year. So this year is only a fiscal year change since we are in the middle of appropriation year 23. So there are only 5 tables affected by this year's program. Fiscal year 22 balances will roll to fiscal year 23 for the following tables: cash control, document financial, grant financial, contract financial, and project financial. So the R-Stars D31 screen is the Comptroller General Ledger account profile. And there are profiles for every Comptroller GL account. Each Comptroller GL account is categorized as being a Memo account with a year-end close value of 0, a real account with a year-end close value of 1, or a nominal account with a year-end close value of 2. An example of a Memo account is GL 9010 units accumulated. Every agency processes transaction code 599, and that GL account is on that T code. An example of a real account is GL 0065 undistributed cash receipt. You will find this GL account on transaction code 151. An example of a nominal account is GL 3500 expenditure control cash. You will find this GL account on transaction code 380. Now 380 is a system generated transaction code when you process a warrant payment, a warrant T code like a T code 222, and it posts during the nightly cycle, then the T code 380 will be generated. So for Memo and real general ledger accounts, which those accounts with a year-end close value of 0 or 1, the fiscal year 22 balances will roll forward to the same general ledger accounts for fiscal year 23. Also, the Memo and real accounts do not close at year-end. And Julie will talk next about the year-end closing process. Now, determining which GL account a nominal account balance will roll to in the new fiscal year depends on if the balance is categorized as one of the 8 GASB 54 classifications or not. The D23 fund profile shows if funds with those coding elements are categorized as GASB 54. The year-end roll program will find the GL account to roll the balance to by looking up the GASB 54 code on the D54 screen, which is called the System Parameters Profile. System Parameters Profile is maintained by us in SFMS, so chances are most people have not gone out to look for it, but it is very critical in how our jobs process. So if a D23 fund profile shows that the funds are not categorized as GASB 54, the year-end roll program will find the GL account to roll the balance to by looking at the D21 gap fund type profile. So next we'll look at an example of each scenario. So in this example, Fund 0005 is categorized with a GASB 54 code of A1, which stands for Assigned Fund Balance. The D54 screen profile shows that any nominal account balances for Fund 0005 will roll to GL account 3052. In this example, Fund 1153 is not categorized as GASB 54. As you can see, the GASB 54 field on the D23 fund profile is blank. When the GASB 54 field is blank on the D23 fund profile, the year-end roll program looks up the gap fund type on the D21 gap fund type profile screen. Any nominal GL account balances for Fund 1153 will roll to GL account 3025. And the good news is there are no responsibilities to agencies for a fiscal year roll. SFMS will send out notifications through SFMS News, update the system job profiles, schedule the job to run on the last working day in June, request that the IT file remain closed the morning after the roll so that we can do our validation, verify that the rollover occurred as desired, and then request reopening the IT file after the verification is complete. I know that was quick. Does anyone have any questions about the year-end roll programs?
There are no questions in the chat, Alan. So if people are feeling comfortable with the roll.
Great. All right, up next is Julie to talk about the very closely related year-end close program.
Hello, everybody. So the year-end close program is called the DAP-M 351, in case you ever wondered what number was associated. And the purpose of the year-end close is to close the nominal GL accounts into their appropriate equity accounts. It runs every fiscal year after the close of month 13, and this year it will occur on Friday, August 26th. If you want to know more details about this program other than what we cover here today, you can look at the SFMS desk manual that covers this program in more depth. So determining the equity accounts that the nominal accounts will close into is the same method as Alan just went over for determining the equity accounts for the roll. If the D23 fund has a GASB 54 indicator, that will determine the equity account and the closing transaction codes. If they don't have a GASB 54 indicator, then the program will look to the 21 gap fund profile for those accounts and transaction codes. If you want to identify the closing transactions, they are generated under batch agency 999. They have a batch type of Y and a document type of YG. So the documents all start with those two letters. And their effective date will be 6/31 of 22. Here's the important things for agencies. You do have some responsibilities, and these first two are before the program runs. So you need to order what we call the before reports for month 13, fiscal year 22. And the true reports are the 8650 and the 8920. You need to order those on either August 12th or August 19th. Those reports can only be ordered on Friday, so it's really important that you order them on one of those 2 dates. The other responsibility before the job runs is to update your 25 screen, the agency control profile, before 4:30 on August 26th. You need to set that last month closed indicator to 12 or less, or if you prefer the term earlier. Basically, you just want to make sure it doesn't say month 13. If it has the last month closed indicator of 13, the program would not run properly for your agency. Unfortunately, you will also have responsibilities for after the program runs. The first one is to correct any transactions that erred out on the 5:30 screen. Good news is your SFMS agency analyst is always there to help you, and they will work with you to help correct those errors. Again, there will be Y type batches on the 5:30 screen under agency 999, and agencies will be able to view and correct those transactions using a user class 48. So file that user class number away when it's time to look at if any errors that have resulted from the program run. If you're notified by your SFMS agency, or when you are notified that any and all errors have cleared for your agency, then you will need to return to that 25 screen and reset your last month closed indicator to 13, because once those errors are closed, month 13 for FY22 is truly closed. Couple more things that are important to remember after the program runs. You will want to obtain a copy of DAFR 3511, the General Ledger Close Control Report. You can access this in the SFMS web reports, the electronic format. The report is available from August 27th through September 24th. So that's the time period that electronic reports are available to be accessed. Make sure you pull this report within that time frame, because agencies should retain this for 6 years for audit purposes. You also will want to order your after DAFR reports, those same 8650 and 8920 reports for month 13 FY22. You want to order that after the program runs and all your errors have cleared the 5:30 screen. So once you know that you don't have any errors from the program. The reason you order those after reports is because you then want to compare those to those before reports you ran prior to the job and confirm the following. The nominal balance, the nominal accounts should still have balances so that you can review the activity, but there's a GL 2960, which is the revenue expenditure summary account, and its balance will offset those nominal balances, leaving just the appropriate increase or decrease to the associated equity GL account. So again, you'll see nominal amounts, they will offset with the GL 2960, and we are left with the appropriate impact to the equity GL accounts. If you had any problems, questions, or issues with this, you would want to contact your agency analyst for assistance. Dawn, I just saw your comment. Is everyone still seeing the slide that has the after and number 5 on it? Oh, you know what? I did change this since yesterday afternoon because there was an after responsibility that was mistakenly on a before the job slide. So these current slides are slightly different. The numbers are different. I know you have number 7. They used to start from 1 through 7, and I reordered them to move that after responsibility to the correct location. Information is the same, just rearranged a little bit. And this is the version that will be uploaded onto our website after the user group today. Are there any questions on our closing the year-end job DAF M351? Richard, I see your question. Yes, that's the type of errors you're going to see. You know, we're closing nominal accounts that were open at the beginning of the fiscal year. So if anything has changed since the beginning of the fiscal year, we could see those kind of errors. And again, your agency support analyst is definitely available to help you work through any of those error transactions. Are there any other questions? While we're waiting on that, Fabiola, I think now is the time that we were expecting to take a break. Do you want to set a time amount for today's break?
Yeah, so we are at 9:44. So let's take a 10-minute break because I think we're doing pretty good on time. So we will see everybody back at, I don't know, Julie, I'm thinking, should we do like right at 10, do a 15-minute break? Because it'd be weird to just come back 5 minutes before 10.
I think that would be fine.
Okay, so we will see everybody back at 10 o'clock. All right, thank you. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of start before 10 o'clock comes, and I'm just gonna make sure everybody can hear us again and all of that. Start the presentation back up. So I went through the chat box and saw that some of you, at least 4 of you, have been doing year end 20 or plus years. I think that is great to see. And then some of you, this is your first time. So like I said at the beginning, a lot of the technical pieces is going to just feel foreign to you for a while. But as you just start going through year after year, you start understanding what it is we're doing when we talk about the jobs, because that was the hard part for me as an accountant, to understand the jobs. But the system or accounting system has to run these jobs to get us moving to the next fiscal year, the next biennium year, not year, right? 2 years, biennium 2 years. But so there's a lot we do on the back end to make sure we're ready to go. And that's what we're saying when we're saying about the jobs and stuff. So as you kind of listen to the second piece of the guidelines and the report, it's just basically trying to help you guys understand how our system works and what we need to do and what we need you guys to do. And then that we just let you guys kind of handle that because it's your transactions, right? We take care of the system, but they're really your transactions. So with that, I'm going to introduce Liz, that she's going to be going over the SFMS year-end closing guidelines. So go ahead, Liz.
Okay, thanks, Fabiola. We're at about 9:59, so some people may just be joining us. But as everybody's coming back, good morning, everyone. I hope you had a good break, had the chance to get up and grab some coffee. My name is Liz Schultz. I'm going to be covering the SFMS year-end guidelines for fiscal year 22. And we are in May, so I just kind of wanted to see, does everyone feel ready for fiscal year end this year? Feel free to use the reactions, put a comment in the chat. This section is going to talk about specific year-end closing guidelines that SFMS has to help make the process a little bit easier. And I do have some good news. We're in an even numbered year. We're not in the middle of we are in the middle of a biennium, so we're not closing an appropriation year, which does make things a little bit easier. So that is good news for fiscal year 22 close. So a few questions this presentation will answer about our year-end guidelines. Where are they? Why do you care about these guidelines? What do they cover? When will it matter? How they are presented, and who you can call with questions. And if you have any questions as I'm going through this material, go ahead and type them in the chat. We do have a slide at the end of this section for questions, so we can go through and answer anything if anything wasn't clear, or there's some additional questions you have that aren't covered by the guidelines. Before we start talking about the SFMS year-end guidelines, I do want to point out that we also have a lot of guidance and information for agencies that's put out by Statewide Accounting and Reporting Services, also known as SARS. The first link here, there's a guide to year-end closing. It's very comprehensive. I have a link here. If you follow that, you'll have a lot more information about what you need to look at for financial reporting. They have some good guidance on how to conduct a pre-close review to make sure everything is looking good and you're ready to go for year-end. SARS also puts on an annual year-end training. This is something that agencies must attend. It's a Gold Star requirement. And more information about this training will be sent out through the SARS ACFR news list. I haven't seen a specific date yet, but it's usually in June, so keep an eye out for that. There's a lot of good information that you want to have to help with the year-end process that's presented in that training. You also have your SARS analyst. If you aren't sure who your agency's SARS analyst is, there's a link here to the ACFR contacts. You can look at that by agency and identify who your SARS analyst is. And to clarify, we have SARS analysts. We also have our group, SFMS analysts. And there's a little bit of distinction. We can both help you with year-end questions, but it just kind of depends what your question is. SARS analysts can help with questions on how your activities need to be reported for financial statement purposes. So if you have any questions on, what GL does this need to be reported to? How do I need to make sure this is going to be reported correctly in the financial statements? Your SARS analyst would be the best resource for that. Your SFMS analyst can help answer questions on just kind of the mechanics of making year-end entries. So what T codes do you need to use? Or if you're receiving errors, how can we help you clear those errors? So those are the kind of things SFMS can help you with. I want to just kind of give a reminder, if you have an uncommon year-end situation and you're going to need guidance, and you need to reach out and get information on how to record this activity, please reach out as soon as possible. I know year-end is a busy time, but it's going to behoove you to reach out sooner. If it is an uncommon situation, SARS and SFMS may need to work together before we can provide you proper guidance. So please don't wait until the week of the hard close deadline to ask for help if you need it. Okay. So getting back to our questions of the day for these year-end closing guidelines of where you can find them. So if you got the materials, the slides for this presentation, you signed up through Workday, you should have had a handout that was included with the slides for these year-end closing guidelines. If you didn't get a copy, email us, let us know, we can get that to you. We're also going to be posting them on our website after this user group training at the link shown on this slide. So those are going to be out there. They're really handy to use, and just even keep a bookmark on so you can reference them throughout your end as you need them. So why are these year-end closing guidelines useful? These guidelines have a lot of valuable information that is going to help your agency make closing transactions for fiscal year 2022. We update these guidelines every fiscal year, and they're intended to cover the most frequently asked questions we receive from agencies at fiscal year end. If you've been through year ends before, as I know several of you've been through quite a few, these guidelines should be really similar to you. They follow a similar format each year. We do make some updates, but it's going to follow that same format that you're used to seeing from prior years. If fiscal year end is new to you, or you've only been doing it for a year or two, I strongly encourage you to take a close look at those guidelines. There's a lot of really good information in there. And like I said, keep a copy, bookmark it so you have it nearby to refer to. So what information is covered in these guidelines? The guidelines are really focused on the periods of fiscal month 12 and fiscal month 13 for fiscal year end. So we have 13 fiscal months in SFMA. Fiscal month 13 is an additional accounting period in SFMA after June month end close that you can use for accruals and other year end closing entries. So all fiscal year 22 fiscal month 13 entries will use an effective date of 6/31/22. So it just gives you a little bit more time to get everything in order for fiscal year end. Some key dates. These guidelines are going to be handy during fiscal month 12 and fiscal month 13. Fiscal month 12 spans from June 1st through Friday, July 15th. And fiscal month 13 spans from July 1st through Friday, August 12th. So please note that 2 fiscal years will be open in the system starting on July 1st. So it's really important to pay close attention to the effective date you are entering on your SFMA transactions to make sure you're coding that activity in the proper accounting period. So starting July 1, you're going to have options of whether you want to record activity to fiscal year 22 or to fiscal year 23. So that effective date you put on your transaction is going to control the accounting period it's going to post in. Right, how are these guidelines laid out? So we have the information in a table. We have separate columns for instructions to follow for fiscal month 12 and for fiscal month 13. And then we separate it by different topics. So we have the 530 screen, balance transfers, cost allocation if your agency uses that feature, deposits, expenditures, payroll, creating your 25 profiles for the new fiscal year, if you have suspense accounts or unearned revenue. So we've got several different topics in here. And in the next few slides, I'm going to give you a little bit more example of how that looks in the guidelines. And if you have a copy of the guidelines, you can open up and take a look at them too. But these slides will just kind of show you some of the highlights that you can see in them. So this is some information that we have about the 530 screen and the year-end guidelines. This information is directly from that year-end guidelines handout. We've got a couple of tips at the top of this slide that we like to remind agencies. Whenever you're viewing a batch, you want to make sure you use the F2 function key to view a batch from the 530 screen. You can also view a batch by using F4 change, but the system is then thinking you're intending to make a change. And what we've seen is sometimes when people try to view a batch and use F4, it'll put that batch that was released back on hold. Or it could create user class errors if it's the incorrect user class. And then you're going to have your transaction error out. So if you're expecting a batch to release and you want to make sure it clears overnight, if you want to go in and view it, make sure you're using F2 just so you don't run into those potential delays if you use F4 change, where you have to go back and then re-release the batch the next day. Also, an important thing to remember, I said earlier that 2 fiscal years are going to be open starting July 1st. And when we have that situation, you can't easily update the effective date on edit mode 2 batches from one fiscal year to another. And the reason for this is once you post the transaction, edit mode 2 will save the transaction as soon as you enter it. And then it creates a record on the 37 screen for the fiscal year that you entered. So you can't just go in and say, oh, I accidentally used a June effective date. I want to change it to July because it should be fiscal year 23. What you're going to have to do is you're going to have to delete the incorrect transaction and then re-enter it with the correct effective date. So just an important thing to remember when 2 fiscal years are open. So this table below is what the year-end guidelines look like. We've got a couple examples here for the 530 screen. You see we've got a column for instructions to follow for fiscal month 12, and then we have instructions to follow for fiscal month 13. So in this example, it's going to depend not only which fiscal month you're in, but also the edit mode for the batch. So if you have an edit mode 2 batch remaining on the 530 screen after month close, that transaction has already posted. Edit mode 2 batches post to the financial tables as soon as the transaction is saved. So our recommendation is don't delete or change those. You want to just go ahead and release them because even though they're still on the 530 screen, they already posted in that closed fiscal month. Edit mode 0, 1, and 3 batches have not posted to the financial tables yet. So if those batches are hanging out after the close of month 12 or month 13, you have to either delete the transactions if they should not have been posted, or you're going to have to move the effective date forward to an open fiscal month. And the edit mode can be seen on the 530 screen. It's something that's on the batch header. If you're not sure, you can always reach out to your SFMS analyst if you have any questions on that. We also have information about specific to deposits, some reminders and tips at the top, cash recognition versus cash availability. So GL accounts 0065 and 0070 are both considered cash for financial reporting. But in order to be able to spend cash by your agency, you can't do that until it has moved to GL 0070. We have a process where when you enter the deposit, it needs to reconcile with Treasury. And once it reconciles with Treasury, a T code 332 will generate to clear 0065 and move the balance to 0070. And then your deposit will show a status of reconciled on the 13 screen when that happens. So if you've got balances in 0065, you may not be able to spend them, but they're still going to be reported as cash in the financial statements. We've got some, again, information directly from the year-end guidelines here about deposits, depending on whether it's June bank activity or it's July bank activity, and instructions whether it's in fiscal month 12 or fiscal month 13. Moving on to transfers and expenditures. Key point, do not backdate balance transfers after calendar date 6/30/2022, unless that BT entry meets all three of the criteria that are shown on this slide. So if you're moving cash, it should be recorded using the date the cash actually moves at Treasury. So even though you may be at the beginning of July, July 1st, June fiscal month is still open. If you're actually making that balance transfer in July, you should use a July effective date. You shouldn't backdate it to June 30. If you have that situation, you can then accrue that for the prior fiscal year. If that transfer should have been done in June, but it wasn't made until July, recorded in July, and then you can accrue the T code, an appropriate T code. For expenditures, any services and supplies received as of calendar date June 30, you can go ahead and record in fiscal month 12 and fiscal month 13. If you have a situation where you're actually not going to be able to make the payment before the close of fiscal month 13, so you're not ready to cut a warrant to the vendor, you can use T code 437 to accrue that fiscal year 22 expenditure. And in this last example I have from our year-end guidelines, we have instructions for payroll. At year-end close, June payroll should be posted in fiscal month 12. If any June 2022 payroll transactions remain on the 530 screen, after July 14th, the transactions need to be moved forward to a July effective date. And then you will have to accrue that fiscal year 22 payroll activity with T code 437. And if you're going to be doing that accrual, the system automatically reverses out the accrual entry at the start of fiscal year 23. So there's a lot of information in here on a lot of different topics. I recommend you go through those guidelines, reach out to us if you have any questions on this information. But a lot of this should help answer some of the most common questions we see at year end. So again, we've got a couple of reminders here. I already went through several of these about how you want to view transactions on the 530 screen, about how correcting effective dates is going to be difficult when 2 fiscal years are open, depending on the batch type, and to not backdate BTs. We also have on page 2 of the guidelines a link to our BT contact list. This is a list you can use. SFMS updates it to keep it current with contacts from other state agencies. So if you need to transfer funds to another agency and aren't sure who you should work with on that, you can refer to the BT contact list to find your contact at that other agency. Page 4 also has some mass batch change instructions. Maria is also going to be going over that later in this presentation. And we do have some information on fiscal year 23 cost allocation dates for those agencies that use this SFMA feature. So the last piece we have here is if you have questions. We try to make sure we're putting good information in these guidelines and that we're covering everything, but questions come up. You may have a situation that's not covered by the guidelines. So reach out to your SFMS analyst. We're here to help. Our contact information is here. If you don't know who your agency's analyst is, you can go to the 90 help screen in R-Stars, enter the keyword news. And then if you take a look at page 5, you'll be able to see your agency number and how it's assigned to all those different, or those 3 different analysts that we have. So that was a lot of information that I went through. I'm going to open it up if anybody has any specific questions at this time.
Does anybody out there have a question they've been holding on to and haven't typed in yet? I also want to add to what Liz said as one of the 3 analysts. If you aren't sure who your analyst is, you can call anybody at SFMS and they should be able to tell you as well, especially any one of the 3 of us. We can direct you to the analyst that your agency is assigned to. Well, thank you, Liz. I do not have any questions at this time.
All right, then I will turn it over to Devin. She's going to talk next about year-end reports. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. All right, so today I'm going to cover ordering year-end reports. Take control. There we go. So this section is going to provide recommendations on reports to order for year-end. Example screen prints will also be provided for ordering these reports and previews of what these reports will look like. So first, we'll discuss the recommended reports to order during month 12 and month 13 close. SFMS recommends that agencies at minimum order a trial balance, operating statement, and balance sheet for both month 12 and month 13 close. Additionally, after the year-end close jobs run, agencies should order the DAFR 8650 and 8920 to verify the nominal accounts closed accurately. There are links on this slide to the details of each report in the report guide. So there are some things to consider when ordering reports during year end. Because there are up to 3 months and 2 fiscal years open simultaneously, agencies should be careful when selecting period indicators when ordering reports. And this slide contains a chart of the different period indicators and a brief definition of each one. For a more detailed description and examples, there are some pages that you can review in Chapter 1 of the report guide on page 17. And so this next slide has an example of ordering the operating statement for month 12. Take note of the different time frames that are covered with each period indicator on this day. So there are different ways that this profile could be coded to produce these results. For example, we could use a period indicator of CC, and that would get us the same results as filling in period 12 fiscal year 22. But for this presentation, only one example is shown. Additionally, these level options here that are shown on this example may not be the same across agencies. And this slide has an example of an operating statement for agency 999. The snip of this report is showing the nominal general ledger accounts in the general fund. And on the next slide, we have an example of ordering the balance sheet for month 13. Take note of the different time frames that are also covered with each period indicator on this day. Again, there are several ways that this profile can be coded to produce this report for this same time frame. So for example, using a period indicator of CC would get the same results as filling in period 13 fiscal year 22. But for this presentation, only one example is shown. Additionally, these level options that are on this example may not be appropriate for the same agencies, for different agencies. Okay. And here we have an example of a balance sheet for agency 107. The snip of this report is showing the real general ledger account in the D23 custodial agency fund. Additional reports that should be ordered on month 13 close are the before reports, the DAFR 8920 and the DAFR 8650 that Julie discussed earlier regarding the year-end close program. Agencies have the option to order these reports on either August the 12th as shown or the following week on August the 19th. The example dates on this slide cover ordering the reports on August the 12th. And additionally, these level options here and the special select may not be the same across agencies. And here is an example of the DAPR 8920. The SNP of this report is showing the summary of activity by T code in GL 0070 for Agency 107. This next slide is mostly for informational purposes and shows the variability in dates when ordering July reports on September the 2nd. So notice that the current month indicator will cover part of September, but the current close indicator will cover July activity. Okay. So moving through our timeline, in this next slide, we have an example of ordering the DAPR 8650 after report on September the 2nd, 2022. Take note of the different time frames that are covered with each period indicator on this day. Again, there are several ways to order this report. The profile can be coded different ways. For example, using a period indicator of CC would get the same results as filling in period 13 fiscal year 22. For this presentation, only one example is shown, and again, the level options here may not be the same across agencies. And on this slide, we have an example of the DAPR 8650. So the SNP of this report is showing the summary of activity by general ledger account for Agency 107. And on this slide, I have included a link of a recent training provided by SFMS that covers an introduction in ordering DAPR reports. This link is helpful to anyone that desires a more in-depth understanding of ordering reports. And at this point, I am available for any questions regarding DAPR reports at year end.
Does anybody have any questions on ordering reports? Any of the reports that Devin covered or indicators to use when? I do not have anything coming through, Devin, so thank you very much.
All right, so I'll pass the baton on to Maria to discuss the 54 series screens.
Hi, and good morning, everybody. We are going to talk about 54 series screens. This process you will use for correct some errors. It's easy, straightforward. It just needs a little bit of attention. So we have 4 54 screens, 54A for batch header corrections, 54B for detail corrections, 54C. This is informative screen that will show you which field ID you need to select. And 54D would be batch detail correction. So when you can use 54 screen, it's when you attempt to correct multiple errors within one batch. To change the batch effective date, the 54 series of screens can be used only for batch. They have edit mode 0, 1, and 3. And the 54A, B, C, and D screens can be used to correct multiple transactions in one attempt instead of going to 5-10 screens and correct the errors in each individual transactions. As long as all the transactions are in one batch, you can do mass changes for all of them. So which user class can do this? It is all depends on the T code is used on the transactions you are attempting to correct the error. So how you can get there? As simple as typing 54A on link 2 field and hit enter. Then you are there. Simply, you will put your agency number in a batch agency field or the batch's agency number. And then again, you will hit enter. And then on 54A screen, you will see the list of the edit mode 3's transactions. So simply you want to put S and select the transaction you need to work on. So you put S, and tricky part is hit F5 or F6. So here, our first option is go with F5. When you do F5, you will see immediate changes on the transactions. So you hit F5, you get in 54B screen. On 54B screen, you will put sequence number if you want to specifically correct the specific sequence, specific transactions. And you will put field ID. What is field ID? Pretty much it is refer you to the field you want to correct. So if it is effective end date, field ID is 24. And if it is something else, that will have different field ID. And how you will get there, that I will show you. But then a last field is correct effective date. So when you put all here, and as you see, I left sequence number blank. That's because I want to change effective date on all the transactions in the batch. So if you have batch with 100 transactions in it, and you just want to apply your change to all the transactions in the batch, simply you will just leave the sequence number blank. And hit, oh, I'm sorry. And then hit F10 to apply the changes. So let's talk about how you can get this field ID. Simply, you will bring your cursor and put it under FID and hit F4. As you see down here, F4 shows values. As soon as you hit F4, you will get to 54C screen. So as you see, 24 here is effective end date. So system identifies each field with some ID number. That's the how you tell system which field you are attempting to correct. So when you can use F5, we said when you use F5, changes applies immediately on the batch. That means when you hit F10 and save the changes, when you back to 530 screen, you will see your effective date changed. It's only, you can use F5 only not at year end, not when 2 fiscal years are open, and when your transactions numbers in the batch are less than 1,000. So if you have batch with 999 transactions, you can do F5, and changes will apply immediately on the 530 screen. Okay, let's now talk about F6. Again, back to first step, you navigate yourself to 54A screen, and you put your agency number and you see the transactions here. You select the transaction you want to correct, and then instead of F5, you put F6. You hit F6. I'm sorry. That F6 will take you to 54D screen. In 54D screen, pretty much system will goes to apply the changes over nightly batch cycle. So here again, I left my sequence number blank. I put 24 because I want to correct effective end date, and I put correct effective end date. And I leave sequence number blank, I mentioned, because I want to do mass changes. I want to change all of them. Then I will hit F11. When you do F6, you want to do F11, and that will save all the changes. But all the changes will not be visible immediately on the 530 screen. That means you will wait overnight during the batch nightly cycle that changes will apply. And that will be for the And when you can use this F6, sorry, let me back here. When it is not, when 2 fiscal years are open, and when your transactions are over 1,000 transactions, you can use F6. And F11 will do the mass changes. And there is more detail and comprehensive explanation about all this process in desk manual. It's easy, straightforward. It just needs some attention because it has a lot of details in it. Any questions?
There are no questions in the chat. Hopefully everybody
Thank
feels
you.
comfortable and will utilize those 54 screens. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. And now we are going to have Oregon buys.
Good morning. Okay, so good morning. The things that I want to cover today, one is a project status update. So we are currently working with our Wave 1 agencies on their agency validation sessions. And so what those consist of are the agencies are running batches through our Oregon Buys UAT environment to our STARS acceptance region, and that helps them to basically test the existing RSTARS interface for their agency. So those are going on, as well as the agencies running through their agency-specific business processes in Oregon Buys. So taking the enterprise guidance and those processes, any additional details or kind of unique processes for those agencies, and testing those out in the UAT environment to make sure that their business needs are met. We are doing preparation for go live. So our Wave 1 agencies will be going live next month. And so in preparation for that, we have presented options to those agencies for how they want to be engaged with our project team. So some of those agencies are pre-scheduling recurring meetings, and so they're meeting with our project team, with the vendor, and getting their support that way. We also have kind of ad hoc agency initiated meetings. We have some agencies that are just checking in via email with Adam Helvey, our agency liaison, and then we also offer office hours, and so agencies are able to drop in for that if they would rather go with that option. We're working through the guidance decision. So as we worked with the Wave 1 agencies, any of the outstanding questions that require guidance decisions, we're taking those back and working with the appropriate subject matter experts to be able to document all of those guidance options for those agencies. We also collected change management survey results. So we did an ADCAR survey. We had 71 total respondents. And this shows we had 95% of those respondents say that they are familiar with the project. 88% are motivated to be a part of the change, and 78% are looking forward to using Oregon Buys. And so really, I think these results show that we have successfully built awareness and desire for the project. So we are very excited about that, and really thank our Wave 1 agencies for all the hard work and dedication that we've been seeing from them so far. So just to cover what is in our phase 2, which is where we are in our project today. So phase 1 was replacing the ORPN system. That went live July 1st of last year. And so we are in phase 2 of the Oregon Buys project, and that's rolling out the procure to pay functionality for state agencies. State agencies have self-enrolled in one of 3 waves, and we are in wave 1 right now. So this yellow box here on the left, we kicked off in September, and go live is set for June. We've done our planning and designing, and then as I mentioned, we're really kind of right in the middle of that validation work with the agencies, and then it's just training and go live. So we are excited. We're getting very close, and I think that we have seen very impressive and engaged agency support, and we're just really excited about where we're at. So just to point out, Wave 1 will go live in June of 2022, and then we'll start work with wave 2. Wave 2 is set to wrap up in January, and then our final wave starts in February of 2023 and wraps up in September. So I just want to cover Oregon Buy's usage. Folks may have seen this slide. It's had a few little updates to it if you've seen it before. So to cover what would be going through Oregon Buys. Agencies are expected to process all their procurement spend through the system, regardless of the dollar value. Non-procurement spend should not be captured in Oregon Buys. So this graphic shows some examples of what would be captured. So we would see things like purchases from our price agreements like office supplies, furniture, tires, small procurements, fees for attending trainings, conferences, that type of event held during the conference, competitively bid goods and services and direct awards, so things that are subject to the Oregon Procurement Code. And then here at the bottom, travel and hotel costs can be captured through Oregon Buys, but really capturing those costs are optional and at the agency's discretion. We realize that there are times where it just makes more sense for the agency to be able to book a hotel, for example, directly with the hotel's website, something like that. So that's an agency option. The things that would not be captured in the system would be utilities, rent. We do not facilitate agency to agency invoices, so we are not doing balance transfers between agencies. Employee reimbursements would not go through the system. Capital construction payments, so we're highlighting that piece there. The system would not allow for conducting those payments. And then grant agreements, and you'll see at the bottom, I've got an asterisk here next to urgent purchases. And the next slide here is going to really highlight what we mean when we talk about urgent purchases. I'm watching the chat box too and make sure we don't have any questions. Okay. So urgent purchases, really what we're talking about in that situation, these are things that are unanticipated, urgent, or emergent purchases of goods or services that are subject to the procurement code. We just know that there are times where a purchase is unexpected, it's needed immediately, and it would typically be purchased directly from the retailer using a spots card. So those would not be processed. They can't be processed in Oregon Buys after the fact. They have to be processed, reported, and tracked using existing agency methods. And we've got some examples here. So for example, if you have a state trooper who their windshield wiper breaks while they're out on patrol, it's rainy weather, they need to stop and purchase a new one. We understand that is an urgent purchase and they can't stop and put it through Oregon Buys. So that would qualify as an urgent purchase. Another might be an OSHA inspector that needs to purchase unanticipated PPE in order to enter a place of business. That would be another one. And then there's a couple of other examples here as well. But really, it's just those things that normally they would be subject to the procurement code. They would be going through Oregon Buys, but just because of the nature of what it is and that they were unanticipated and needed immediately, those can qualify as an urgent purchase. And we understand that those would not go through the system. Are there any questions on this one? I'm going to pause for a second and just watch the chat. Debt service payments will not go through Oregon Buys. Okay, thank you. Ginger, that is a very good segue because that is a future slide. So I'm going to hold on your question at this point. And here we are. So thank you. So encumbrances are not processed in Oregon Buys. Our governing bodies voted to not allow encumbering to go through Oregon Buys. Oregon Buys only interfaces the T code 222 transactions. We did make the commitment that we would revisit that decision if we ever move from a batch interface potentially to a real-time integration. That is not in the scope of the project, but if we ever do revisit that, then we would revisit encumbering at that point in time. So for our agencies who encumber, they'll have to continue to encumber manually in RStars the way that they do today. And when they're going through their implementation waves, so I talked about those 3 waves of state agencies, they should evaluate how it impacts their current business process. So that's definitely something that the agency core team would want to bring forward as you're talking with the Oregon Vice project team when you're engaged in your wave. And we can help kind of get you to some resources about other options that might be available or something like that. So it's definitely something you'll want to bring up as you're working with the project team when you're in your wave. Ginger, did that address your question? I think, you know, decisions were made. I think it did. Perfect. Okay, so with that, that's all I brought to the group today, but I'll pause and see if there, thanks, Ginger. I'll pause and see if there are any other questions.
So this is a good opportunity for our attendees to ask Nicole any of your Oregon Vice questions. If you're in wave 1 heading into this, or even if you're in a subsequent wave, feel free to type in a question for us. And I guess at this point, Nicole, I don't have anything showing. If you want, we can either forward any chat messages we received to you if you need to go, or you're welcome to stay and continue to monitor the chat if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe at this point, we're going to welcome Aaron Wallace.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me come and present. Just going to be talking a little bit more about the thing hopefully on everybody's mind of the OBIEE, Oracle's new platform that we're using to query the data mart. And so I keep telling you guys about the same kind of stuff each time this SFMS comes around, user group comes around, but got to get it out there, got to make sure everybody's on the same page. So here's a couple things I wanted to remind you guys about. Just the Hyperion status, you know, still got training going out there. Security logging in, want to make sure everybody's getting it together and working on this. Formula help. I know a lot of people getting into the program have now started to get to formulas and are struggling. So a little bit about that. About the repository. Yes, we have another repository for OB, and just like we did with Hyperion. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then subject areas. That's going to be our new tables that we're looking at. They're called subject areas. Instead, in Hyperion, we just call them tables. So we'll look for that and then some help. So I appreciate your time, and here we go. So a little bit of the status. What's going on with Hyperion? Well, hopefully you received that Data Mart news list email a little while back saying, hey, yes, the Oracle EULA ends June 30th. And guess what that means? That means we are done with Hyperion. All current Hyperion desktop installs have to be removed by that date. We sent out certification forms to higher up management, and they have been certifying that they are removing this. Getting back to Trudy Vidal is in charge of that, and she is sending all those out to people. So hopefully you received those and replied. And I think we're pretty close to getting all those certifications in that people will be uninstalling all of their Hyperion desktop installs. Now, of course, agency techs have been deciding on when they actually are going to remove the installations, and it varies by agency. So it just all depends on what the text came up and we talked with management, hopefully that is occurring. Here, even at DAS, we're going June 1st. So getting off and doing it early. I know a lot of agency techs out there are doing it early. I'm not sure what your agency is, but I apologize that they are doing that early, but they got to get it done by the June 30th date. So they are looking at some earlier times. So yeah, that's going to put us at a little more crunch. So we only got about a month left or so. But you know what? If OB is not your choice too, then you may want to go a different route with your agency. I mean, we are going to have OB out there for you and continue to provide that. But maybe you just say, hey, I want to go use Excel, or I want to go use Access or Power BI, or whatever that may be. That is your choice as an agency. You are still able to use those tools to query the data mart. Okay, so that is still out there and will continue to be out there in the future. So if you decide even to do multiple, like yes, you still want to use OB and use the Power BI or whatever it may be, then those are available to you. Just go through the proper security requests and that kind of stuff, and you can do. Now, if you have any questions around those actual applications and what they're going to cost your agency and that kind of thing, you can send some questions to the Oracle request at das.oracle.gov site, and hopefully they can tell you a little bit about that. But hopefully you're in OB1 and cruising through it and actually doing some great stuff. And if you are, then guess what? Hopefully you all have, and I do have 3 main trainings there learning. So get out there, get that Data Mart OB version for getting moving forward with the OB product. And then I do have a Data Mart Fundamentals, which is different, not truly focused on OB, but it is if you're new to the stage and want to get a little bit more fundamentals going. I am planning on doing a actual live little training maybe in the next 2 weeks or so that will be coming out over the news list, letting you know you can sign up for that. It is going to be similar to the conversion training that I did back in January, very, very similar. So if you took that training back then, you may not need to take this training, but so maybe give some other people a chance, an opportunity to get into that training and if they haven't. But I wanted to at least give you guys a little bit more knowledge before that final push occurs. I'm going to be going through a couple different examples in that one, similar to that I did in January. And so that'll be hopefully good and help you guys a little bit more. Now, of course, future trainings I am looking to do stuff on dashboards, stuff on pivots and advanced filtering. Those are already in my thought process of trying to get some trainings out there for you. And any suggestions you guys have, just send that into Data Mart support. I would love to hear it. I want to get training out there that you guys will use, and so your ideas are welcome. Definitely send that to Data Mart support. Okay? So hopefully you're out there and you're working and getting into the security of OB1 and getting access and that kind of stuff. So when you're out there, you want to go to the production site. So I left that link in there. I know there's some odd links that have been circulating, and we don't want to go to those. They won't get you in there properly. So you want to go to that specific link. That'll get you to the production site. That's what we work in. Everybody should be working in production. We've actually, we do have a test environment, but we've now limited that to just admin. So I've removed all the unnecessary users out of the test environment. And so you should just be going to production. Okay. And people in there. So that's, it's for so admin just being in there is a little bit better for our, from.
Excuse me, Aaron?
Yes.
We're having a bit of a choppiness with your audio. I know there was an email that came out regarding some issues with Teams right now through the data, through IT, but also just wanted to bring it to your attention in case you can focus maybe a little more on your mic due to that situation.
Sure, I will try and do my best. Sorry about that. Apologize. Technical difficulties always seem to happen. But yeah, so you should be using the production environment. And if at all you guys had some data or files that you saved in the test environment previously and you weren't able to convert them into production, let me know and I can just move those over for you. It's a pretty easy process of getting them over from that perspective. All right, so of course, whenever, I want to remind you that whenever you're going to have a new person in your agency getting OB access, you do need to get them on the shared Active Directory or the shared AD. And that kind of process has to go through your agency ARS admin team. Okay, so your ASO or management should be telling your ARS admin team, hey, we need to get this new user out there, get them an account. At the same time, your ASO is sending the requests into SARS, but you do need to make sure that they have an account out there so SARS can actually add the security views to that account. So that team will set that up, and if you are a non-sync agency, they will do resets for your passwords if need be. But other than that, they're just there to just set up the account and get you started. But then the rest of it goes to your ASO that has to speak directly to SARS system security. I'm sorry, I'm actually not involved in that process. So I'd be happy to help you out if something's going wrong, but they're the ones that actually take care of that, getting you set up, okay? So of course, once you're set up, you get out there and you go to the production site and you're gonna go ahead and log in and you'll see this little screenshot here. That's what you'll see, and you'll put in your information. Now, each agency has a pretty standard setup, and depending on, I mean, even some agencies are different than others, but we have a pretty standard, your name, and then at Oregon.gov or your name _SS at Oregon.gov. Okay, so that'll be your standard login. Hopefully your ASO will let you know what your stuff is, and you'll be able to log in there. Now, we have two different kinds of passwords as well. We have sync and non-sync. So if your agency is a sync agency, then of course it will be the same password as your work login, which is really nice. But you got to remember there's that 90-day policy. So OB passwords will expire every 90 days. So if you do not update your work computer every 90 days, then you'll be locked out of OB. So, and then all you'd have to do is go in and change your work computer password, and it'll sync up in about 20 minutes or so, and you'll be good to go again. But just remember that. I know a lot of people at DHS, OHA don't have the requirement to have to change their password every 90 days. So for the work computer, so just remember, maybe a pop-up reminder for yourself to change that password every 90 days. So you'll be good to go. All right. And then of course we have the non-sync people, and those people have to go to the OB website and set up a profile and then get their password from there. And if ever they need a reset, that has to go to your agency ARS admin team. I am not involved in the password resetting. They're the ones that actually do that. Okay? They're the only ones that have that capability. Besides you, once you set up an actual profile, then you can actually reset yourself. So you'll have to have security questions and remember those security questions so that you can actually give yourself a reset. All right, so once you're out there and you're actually creating things, definitely you're going to need probably some formula help. And the first place you should go to is out of my Datamart website and check out the document, the PDF document out there. There's so much great information on that. It really walks you through things. It shows you examples of what it was in Hyperion and then what it is in OB. So definitely check that out. And so, you know, if you're looking for an if-then type of statement, then it's now case when in OB. So it's a little different there. But stuff like substring, that's an actual pretty similar, almost the exact same formula. Concatenation and not filters, those also are shown on that PDF. So definitely go check that out and read through that, because it's really, really helpful when you're doing any kind of formulas. Okay, and you can see the little screenshot there. You would just click on the OB tab and then go down to the passwords area, or I mean the formula help document. You'll see right there. So it's pretty easy to get that formula help. All right. Even the complex formulas, that basis on that document should really get you there. And of course, you can always send stuff to me and I'll try and help you out as well. All right. Another nice reminder, OB repository, we have that out there for you, just like in Hyperion, but it's right there on the site. And all you do is go to the catalog section and go to the folders, and then you'd go to the shared folders, repository, and final. And you can see a screenshot right there. It shows you exactly where you would go. And the final one is the ones where you actually click in and you actually get the final files. Now, if you do find anything that's wrong with them, or you think they're not working properly, go ahead and shoot me an email. I take any suggestions, and then I'll try and improve them. Now, of course, this is a statewide level, so if you're looking for things to change on your own that you want personal use for, you can still do that, but you want to save those files to your own directory and play around with them there. Okay, we don't mess with the ones that are out on the final folder, but you are able to copy and paste it to your own directory or save as to your own directory. And we have a couple files out there that are dashboards, and they have a lot of linked files in there. So you'll also see in the screenshot there at the very bottom, it shows linked files. And you can click that linked files folder and get the actual analysis files that are linked in there, such as the 6610, 6620, the CIFA, those kind of things are in there in the linked files folder. And you can copy and paste those into your own folders and change those all you would like, okay, for your own personal use, right? So those are the two folders that you'll be in. There is more folders, a test folder and whatnot. That is for admin, so that we can test things out and then move to the final folder. Now, some of the latest things, hopefully you've seen, and you've been out there. We've got the operating transfers detail, duplicate payments, gap offsets, and guess what? The DAFR 6620 is now updated and a lot faster. We even took DHS from going 30 minutes down to 2 minutes. So it is running a lot smoother, and it's really great. So for year end, this should be really helpful for you to go out there and get your DAFRs. Okay, so definitely check that out. Available to you. Now, just another little thing with subject areas. Just a reminder what a subject area is. That is really a new name for what the tables you are accessing in OB. Okay, so in Hyperion, we just saw in the query section, we would see the tables. Now we have subject areas. Now, reminder for subject areas, we did a little bit of name changing on the subject areas. So when you're looking at profile fields, we now have the actual screen in RStars that it comes from. For example, here the agency is now DO2 agency. So it's a nice way to separate and find what are the profile information and what is the regular financials tables. Okay. Now, I know you really want to probably combine subject areas together, and that used to be called local results back in Hyperion. Now, I do not recommend that, and that is it's not set up for that. Okay. Once you start doing that, you can really cause issues and errors and that kind of thing. So I would stay away from that kind of stuff. Again, we have not set that up properly for you to use that. All you do is pick one subject area, and that's all you need. Okay, it's got all the profiles attached to it that you need as well. And so it's all right there for you. And when you're thinking about that, if you're converting, of course, for the conversion, you look at the Hyperion, find the one financial table, such as the all accounting event, and say, oh, well, that's exactly the subject area that I need. So you go find all accounting event subject area. Okay, and it'll have not only the subject area, not only the all accounting event table, but it'll have all the profile tables associated with it that used to be joined, and you'd had to do all that joining and that kind of stuff. There's no longer any of that. It's already there for you and ready to go. Now, if you do happen to find something that you think should be joined in there, some profile table is not there, then go ahead and and let me know about it and say, oh, this is the reason why and here's the file I used in Hyperion, that kind of stuff, and we'll try and get that there for you. But we do have to research and make sure it's okay for that to be allowed. Okay. All right. So last little bit, helpful reminders. Don't forget the data mart hasn't changed. So we're still accessing the same data. We're still going to get the same data. OB should be the exact same data as Hyperion because they're both coming from the same database. Nothing has changed. Yes, it looks a little bit different. It feels a little bit different, but you're still looking at the same data. Okay. And some other little changes. Yes, all the OB1 files will be saved to the DAS server. But if you're thinking about, oh, I lost my file, or oh, it's been changed by somebody else, or all that little stuff that you're worried about, no, we actually have the server backed up for up to a month back. So you could let us know and say, hey, our file got corrupted, whatever, and we'll go ahead and get that file back for you. Okay, up to a month old. All right. So definitely let me know if any of that happens to you. And just a reminder, I think I've sent this out over the news list, but if you're using fields when you're building a query in OB, as well as Hyperion, we always would use the main financial table first and then use the profile fields second. All right. We only want to use the profile fields if that field is not on the main financial table. Okay. So just remember that if you're saying, okay, I want to use the D23 fund from the D23 profile table. No. Don't use that because it's on the all accounting event table. So use the D23 fund from the all accounting event, that kind of thing. If they're in both places, we don't want to use it on the profile. It starts messing up your query. It takes your queries longer to run behind the scenes, as well as it may give you false data. Okay. Another little thing, I am still looking at the top 10 longest running queries report. All right. So don't take offense to this. If I contact you and say, hey, your query is in that top 10, all I'm trying to do is make sure that you're building your queries the best that can be built and the fastest they can run. So I will offer suggestions and provide answers for you that will help your queries run a lot smoother. Okay, with all of us hitting the server with this new product, we want to make sure the server is running the most smoothly and your queries are running smooth. So that's all I'm doing. Please take no offense to that. I just want it to be the best for you. Okay, so I'm still looking at that. And then if you have any questions, of course, send it to datamart@das.oregon.gov. I'm not here all the time. I do have vacation. I do have sick leave. I do have backup, though. Great people backing me up. So I want to remind you of that. So send it to Datamart. Okay, I got a question. How can we filter repository reports by GLs? So as I said, if you want to filter something such as let's say the DAF are 66, 10s and 20s or whatnot, those files can be taken and then saved to your own files, and then you can filter them additionally on your own and that kind of stuff. So it's all up to you to save that to your own directory and then mess with it on your own. Please do not try and mess with the file that's out there on the main directory folder, repository, excuse me, repository folder. Okay.
All right, thank you, Aaron. I know we are questions, Toby. If you have some, I know we're running a couple minutes late, so I just want to be very respectful of everybody's time. I'm just going to, if you have more questions for Aaron, please put it in the chat. I have 3 announcements that I wanted to go over really quickly. The first one is, let me see, for every main contact that we have, we are updating our agency contact lists. So you'll be seeing emails. I think Devin has already sent hers out, but Maria and Julie are also going to send it out. And this is a way for us to know who to communicate and when, because there's a lot going on. So we have different contacts for different purposes. So if you can send those back to your analyst, we really appreciate that, because we need to get them up and ready for all of the year-end stuff work. The second announcement is that we are going to have a couple more trainings. We're going to have a T-code training in the fall, and another report training is coming too. So please be aware of those. I send those through the SFMS distribution list. And then number 3, I kind of want to have fun with this one. It's a survey. We always send a survey out every time we have a presentation to let us know how we did. And we're getting like a 30% return rate, I guess. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of want to get that higher. So there's like 80 people that attended today. So we could get like 50% responses, we would really appreciate it. So, and I will give you guys the statistic in our next user group, which will be November 1st. So put that on your calendars now. We might make it an hour and a half. That's what we used to do before, just to allow that back and forth. So anyways, I really appreciate everybody joining us this morning. And that, you know what I thought about the whole time in the 2 hours, I was like, I never introduced myself. So for the people that this is their first time, my name is Fabiola Flores. I am the SFMS manager, because I think everybody gets introduced with the slides and stuff. So for everybody else, have a great rest of your summer. Happy year end. I love like July 1st, and we can say, you know, new year, fiscal year 2023. So anyways, have a great rest of your guys' day. We'll see you in November. Contact your analyst if you guys have questions.
Thank you all for joining us today. I will be leaving this meeting here very quickly. I do have another meeting I need to attend. This is Julie, the meeting organizer. So I usually kind of stay on and wait for people to log out, but I will be shutting this meeting down within about the next 60 seconds. So just wanted to let you know that. Look forward to working with you as we move on through the year. Bye, everybody.